The autumn sun filtered through the tall windows of Cedar Grove Elementary, casting long shadows across the polished hallway floor. It was that quiet time just before dismissal, when the building held its breath, waiting for the rush of children and parents that would soon fill every corridor. Margaret Chen stood near the main entrance, her silver hair neatly pinned back, her posture still carrying the authority of someone who had led one of the city's largest corporations for 30 years. She was 72 now, retired for a decade, but she had never quite lost that executive bearing. Today, though, her expression was softer, more uncertain. She was waiting for her great-niece's children, 3 of them, triplets actually. 7 years old, all boys, and each one a handful in his own unique way. The school had called her that morning. Her niece, Patricia, was in the hospital with appendicitis. The surgery had gone well, but she would need a few days to recover. Could Margaret possibly pick up the boys from school? Just for today? Someone else would help tomorrow. Margaret had said yes, of course. Family was family. But standing here now, she felt a flutter of nervousness she hadn't experienced in years. Other parents were beginning to gather. Young mothers with infants strapped to their chests. Fathers in business suits, checking their phones. Grandparents with tired smiles and comfortable shoes. They clustered in small groups, chatting easily, their routines well established. Margaret stood alone. The bell rang, and within moments, the hallway erupted with the sound of children. Backpacks bouncing, sneakers squeaking, voices calling out in that particular pitch that only elementary schoolers can achieve. And then she saw them. Noah came first, moving with that jerky, uncoordinated gait that made other children step back instinctively. His arms flailed slightly as he walked, and his face wore an expression of intense concentration. He was the one Patricia had gently explained was on the spectrum. He saw the world differently, Patricia had said. Sometimes sounds were too loud. Sometimes he needed to move in particular ways. Sometimes he couldn't look you in the eye, even when he loved you very much. Behind him came Elijah, quieter, more withdrawn. He clutched a worn stuffed rabbit to his chest, his eyes darting around the hallway as if searching for threats. Patricia had mentioned that Elijah had anxiety. Loud noises frightened him. New situations frightened him. Most things frightened him, really. But he was working with a therapist, and he was getting braver every day. And finally, there was James. Sweet James, who moved more slowly than the others, whose features were soft and gentle, whose eyes tilted upward at the corners in that way that told you he had Down syndrome. He was humming to himself, something tuneless but happy, completely absorbed in his own little world. Margaret's heart squeezed with love and worry in equal measure. She watched as the other children flowed around her great-nephews like water around stones. Parents glanced over, their expressions ranging from curious to uncomfortable to carefully blank. One mother actually steered her daughter to the opposite side of the hallway. Noah began to hum, a low sound that grew gradually louder. His hands started to flap at his sides. Several parents nearby exchanged looks. One whispered something to another. Margaret felt heat rise in her chest. Not anger, exactly. Something deeper, sadder. She started to move toward the boys, but the crowd was thick, and she was still 20 feet away. That's when she noticed him. He was standing off to one side, a man probably in his mid-40s, dressed in jeans and a simple flannel shirt. He had the weathered look of someone who worked with his hands. Carpenter, maybe, or contractor. His face showed the lines of someone who had smiled often over the years, but also the deeper creases of someone who had known hardship. He was watching the triplets, not with the uncomfortable sidelong glances of the other parents, not with pity or awkwardness. He was watching them the way you might watch something precious and familiar. Margaret saw him move, not toward the crowd of parents, toward the boys. Noah's humming had gotten louder. His hands were flapping more vigorously now, and his eyes had that unfocused look that Patricia said meant he was getting overwhelmed. Parents were actively moving away now, shepherding their children past with quick, nervous steps. The man in the flannel shirt walked straight through the crowd. And then, right there in the middle of the hallway with dozens of people watching, he did something that made Margaret's breath catch. He knelt down, not bending over in that hurried, perfunctory way adults often do with children, but actually knelt, bringing himself to eye level with the boys, lowering himself into their world rather than demanding they rise to his. The hallway seemed to quiet. Or maybe that was just Margaret's imagination, her entire focus narrowing to this moment. The man looked at Noah, not forcing eye contact, just letting the boy know he was there. Then he looked at Elijah, still clutching his rabbit, then at James, still humming happily, and then he spoke. Just 3 words. "I see you." His voice was warm, steady, not loud, but somehow it carried. "I see you." 3 simple words. But the way he said them, it wasn't casual, it wasn't dismissive. It was a declaration, a recognition, an acknowledgement that these 3 boys, in all their differences and challenges and beautiful uniqueness, were seen. Not just looked at, not just noticed, but truly, deeply seen. Noah's hand stopped flapping, his humming faded. He didn't look directly at the man, but his head tilted slightly, listening. Elijah took a small step forward, his grip on the rabbit loosening just a fraction. James stopped humming and gave the man the brightest, most genuine smile Margaret had ever seen. The man smiled back. It was the kind of smile that reached all the way to his eyes and beyond, the kind that made the air around him feel warmer somehow. "You guys having a good day?" he asked, still kneeling, still at their level. James nodded enthusiastically. "We drawed pictures. I drawed a dinosaur." "Drew," the man said gently, "that sounds amazing. I love dinosaurs." Elijah's voice was so quiet Margaret could barely hear it. It was loud today, in music class. The man nodded seriously. "That can be really hard, but you made it through. That takes courage." Noah was rocking slightly on his heels now, but it was a calmer movement. Soothing rather than anxious. He still didn't speak, but he didn't move away either. Margaret finally reached them, her heart full of something she couldn't quite name. The man looked up at her and stood, brushing off his knees. Up close, she could see that his eyes were kind. The kindest eyes she'd seen in a long time. "Are you with these gentlemen?" he asked. "I'm their great-aunt," Margaret said, and her voice came out rougher than she'd intended. "Their mother she's in the hospital, just for a few days. I'm picking them up today." He nodded. "They're good kids. You—" Margaret paused, searching for the right words. "You have a way with children." Something flickered across his face, a shadow. Then that warm smile returned. "I'm a single dad. Have been for 8 years now. My daughter, she's special too. Different challenges than these guys, but I know what it's like to watch people look away." He glanced around the hallway, where parents were now busily collecting their children, pointedly not watching even though Margaret suspected every single one of them had seen what just happened. "Most people are afraid," he continued quietly, "not of the kids, of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, so they do nothing at all. It's easier, I guess." Margaret felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. "But not you," he shrugged. "I just figure we all want the same thing, right? To be seen, to know we matter. Doesn't matter if you're 7 or 70. He looked down at the boys again. These guys matter. James had wandered over to a bulletin board and was tracing the letters with his finger. Elijah was still close, his rabbit back against his chest, but his shoulders less hunched. Noah had pulled a small toy car from his pocket and was rolling it back and forth along the floor, making soft engine sounds. "The thing is," the man said, and now he was talking more to himself than to Margaret, "when my daughter was first diagnosed with cerebral palsy, I thought the hardest part would be the therapy, the doctors, the equipment, all the practical stuff." He shook his head. But that wasn't it. The hardest part was watching people be uncomfortable around her, watching them smile these tight little smiles and hurry away, like her difference was contagious. Margaret nodded slowly. She understood. "So I made a choice," he continued. "I decided that wherever I went, however I could, I'd try to make things a little easier for families like mine. Families like yours, today. Even if it's just kneeling down and saying hello. Even if it's just showing kids that someone sees them for who they are, not what makes them different." "I see you," Margaret repeated softly. "I see you," he confirmed. "Most powerful thing you can say to someone, I think, especially someone who's used to being invisible." They stood there for a moment in companionable silence, watching the boys. The hallway was emptying now. Soon it would just be them. I'm Margaret, by the way, she said, extending her hand. Daniel. He shook her hand firmly. Daniel Morrison. Thank you, Daniel, for this. For them. He smiled. No thanks needed. But I'll tell you what helped me when I was new to all this. Might help you this week, while you've got them. Margaret leaned in, listening. Don't try too hard, he said. Don't treat them like they're fragile or like you need to fix something. Just be present. Be calm. Let them be who they are. The world asks them to work so hard every day to fit in. Home should be where they can just exist. Margaret felt something loosen in her chest. Just exist, she repeated. Just exist. Daniel glanced at his watch. I should get going. My daughter's bus gets to our house in 20 minutes, and I like to be there when she gets home. Of course. He started to walk away, then turned back. Hey, Margaret, yes? You're going to do great. They're lucky to have you. And then he was gone, disappearing through the school's main entrance, leaving Margaret standing in the nearly empty hallway with 3 little boys who were now thoroughly absorbed in their own activities. She took a deep breath, then another. Then she knelt down, just like Daniel had, lowering herself into their world. Hey guys, she said softly, I'm your Aunt Margaret. Your mom asked me to take you home today. We're going to have dinner, and maybe we can watch a movie. How does that sound? James looked up from the bulletin board, his face breaking into that radiant smile again. Can we have pizza? We absolutely can have pizza. Elijah took a tiny step closer. Will it be loud at your house? Margaret thought about her quiet apartment, with its thick carpets and heavy curtains. No, sweetheart. It will be very quiet. As quiet as you need it to be. Noah kept rolling his car, but he was listening. She could tell. Come on, Margaret said, pushing herself to her feet with only a slight wobble. Let's go home. And they did. That evening, as Margaret sat on her couch with James nestled against one side and Elijah on the other, watching Noah line up toy cars on her coffee table with intense concentration, she thought about Daniel Morrison, about 3 simple words that had changed the entire tone of a difficult moment. She thought about all the years she'd spent in boardrooms, making decisions that affected thousands of people. Important decisions, necessary decisions. But she'd never done anything quite as important as what Daniel had done today. He had seen 3 children who the world often overlooked, and he had made sure they knew it. I see you. Margaret made a decision then. When Patricia recovered, when life returned to normal, she would ask to spend more time with the boys. Not out of obligation, not out of duty, but because she wanted to see them, really see them, the way Daniel had, the way everyone deserved to be seen. James shifted against her shoulder, already half asleep. Elijah's grip on his rabbit had finally relaxed completely. Noah's car sounds had grown quieter, more contented. In the soft lamplight of her living room with 3 precious boys in her care, Margaret Chen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not accomplishment, not success. Grace. Pure, simple grace. And tomorrow, when she saw other parents at school pickup, she would do what Daniel had done. She would kneel down. She would see. And maybe, just maybe, she would help change the world, 3 words at a time,